There is something joyous about writing a novel. I think this is why so many people do it. I get a real buzz out of all that creating. Yes, it's a long haul and there's definitely a lot of hard work involved, but there's something hugely satisfying about creating a whole set of characters and a story. And when you get to the end, that is such an achievement that it should be celebrated. Celebrate! My first tip on how to edit is to do just that. You've written a book. Kick back, take some time off. You've done brilliantly. But it's not only about congratulations. There's a serious side to taking time off, and that's because time is a really good editor. Lots of people, when they talk about editing, think it's about getting rid of weak words or too many adjectives or correcting spellings. Yes, that is a stage of editing, and yes, you do need to do all of that, but there are things you need to do first before you need to worry about correct spelling. You need to let the thought go that because it was intoxicating to write, that there's anything magical about a first draft. I always think of editing as being largely about making sure the reader has a good reading experience. So you need to find ways to try to see what the reader will see. Wouldn't it be great if you could find a way to step through the looking glass and see your book from the other side, how a reader will see it? That would be incredibly useful. This is why putting it away for a bit is such a good step. Although more difficult than it sounds, I know probably lots of you out there edit as you go along, but there is big picture editing that you cannot really do properly until you've got to the end of your first draft. I resist as much as I can and write the first draft as quickly as I can. Then, when I come back to it, I try to read it with fresh eyes and read it as analytically as possible. I make notes on what actually happens in the story. For each chapter, ask yourself, what will the reader know at the end of that scene that they did not know at the start? How has the story advanced, both in plot and character? Break it down by chapter or scene until you have a detailed synopsis. Writing it down like this makes it possible to examine the big picture stuff. This is called structural or developmental editing and will give you the power to make your story better. This is why you're doing it. When you write your chapter by chapter synopsis of what actually happens, you will very likely find it highlights problems. One thing I've learned as a creator, we leave parts of the story in our heads. It's a weird thing about writing, but what makes it from your head onto the page is not always what we think is there. We always have far more information than a reader, but you're never going to be sitting there ready to explain. You don't get to say, oh, stay with this bit, the exciting bit's coming, and there's a reason why this character is behaving this annoyingly. All you have is what's on the page. Stories very much naturally fall into a 3-act or sometimes a 5-act structure. So make sure you set up a problem and a desire, let it build. Anxiety increases before there is a final payoff, like a series of stepping stones. Can the reader see that the events are linked? One tip to look for is that your synopsis is full of linking words such as because and but. This is called cause and effect, with things happening because of what went before. If you have bits that are missing this logic, this is what we call a plot hole. Does your character drive and affect the action, or do things simply happen? Does your synopsis show too many random events that happen out of the blue or rely on coincidence? Do you dive off into a subplot or set up questions that show promise but are never resolved, then this is the sort of thing you might want to resolve in your structural edits. What else will your synopsis reveal? Bits where not very much happens, the story is not advancing, or that the love interest has disappeared off the page for a large chunk. Do you want to keep that character more involved in the action? Looking at how it unfolds should make you start to think of where you can make things clearer or stronger, exciting, or matter more to the character and thus to the reader. You might highlight lack of purpose or tension in a scene or chapter. Often you do have a gut feeling about something not working. If you always felt that first scene between your hero and heroine is a bit cringe, it probably is. You can resolve that. If you kind of feel the ending is not that exciting, editing gives you the power to change it. Anything can be changed and improved. It's a bit like improving a house. Better to decide that yes, it needs an extension and a new kitchen. Facing up to that is better than simply trying to hide problems with a coat of paint and some new cushions. Does your big reveal have enough impact? If not, now is the time to go back and see where you could insert some bits earlier and foreshadow. Does the ending rely on your heroine having a fear of heights to create drama? You maybe only came up with that idea as you were writing the end, but you have the power to go back now and put that fear in earlier and heighten the tension of the ending. This is the biggest, most difficult part of editing, and that can be a bit daunting. It can honestly be a bit deflating to realise things are not as good as you like them to be. But recognising problems gives you the power to change. You've already created this whole world. Remind yourself that pretty much anything can be ironed out by revisions. It can help to break down into looking at the different story arcs of your main plot, subplots, and main characters. Does your character grow enough in the story? It can happen that your main character disappears into the background as a more interesting character takes over. It could be that what was supposed to be a subplot has taken over. Does everything you have set up tie up at the end? As you start to see where the problems are and start to sweat out some of the solutions, remind yourself that you are making this story the best it can be. Tightening up all of this is going to vastly improve your story, but yes, it's work. This is why most writers spend more time on editing than they do writing the first draft. All writing is rewriting. I read bits of my first drafts where I made colossal errors and sometimes feel embarrassed that I could have written that, but it doesn't matter, I can fix it. Don't be discouraged by anything you didn't get right the first time around. Don't give up. In fact, when you've completed this long synopsis and worked out how to improve everything, take a moment to congratulate yourself. I think this is by far the most difficult bit of writing. And if you've got this far, you really are on the road to making this story the best it can be. Now you are ready to begin your second draft. And you know this is going to be a whole lot better than your first.